She carried 2 grocery bags up the front steps, just like she always did. The door closed behind her. The bags never came back out. And the camera kept recording an empty doorway, waiting for someone who never returned. She was the kind of person who kept lists on her phone and receipts folded in her wallet. Not because she was anxious, but because she liked things to be handled. Groceries bought, calls returned, promises kept. If someone needed help, she didn't talk about it. She just showed up. That afternoon started the same way. A short list, a familiar drive. Milk, bread, soup, a few things that were easy to carry. Nothing heavy, nothing urgent. Just a stop on the way home. Her uncle lived less than 15 minutes away. A quiet street, older houses, lawns that had gone a little yellow at the edges but were still trimmed. The kind of place where people waved if they recognized your car. She had been there dozens of times before. Holidays, random weekends, quick drop-offs when he didn't feel like driving. He was family, older, a little rough around the edges, but familiar. He'd watched her grow up. She trusted him in the way people trust relatives without thinking too hard about why. She texted him when she left the store. Short message, nothing dramatic, just letting him know she was on her way. He replied with a thumbs up. The drive felt ordinary. Traffic lights, a radio song she didn't really listen to. She parked in the same spot she always did, slightly crooked near the curb. She grabbed the grocery bags from the passenger seat. 2 trips would have been easier, but she didn't want to make him wait. She balanced them against her hip and walked up the steps. The front door opened quickly. No hesitation, no pause, like he had been standing right there. Inside, the house smelled like old carpet and something fried. The lights were on even though it was still daylight. She set the bags down near the kitchen counter. They talked the way people do when nothing is wrong. About the weather, about how expensive everything had gotten, about a neighbor who parked too close to the driveway. She didn't stay long. She never did. She had plans later. Laundry to fold. A show she wanted to finish. This was just a favor. A quick visit. In and out. She checked her phone once. No missed calls. No reason to rush. She smiled when he thanked her, told her she didn't have to keep doing this. She said it was fine. She always said that. From the outside, nothing about that moment looked unusual. The front of the house stayed quiet. No raised voices. No sounds that would make someone stop and look. A few cars passed by. Someone walked a dog on the other side of the street. Life kept moving. The camera mounted near the corner of the house caught her arrival. It saw her step up with the bags. It saw the door open. It recorded the last time she crossed that threshold. Then it kept going. Minutes passed. Then more. The door stayed closed. Inside, time didn't leave a mark the way it does outside. There was no clock she watched. No moment she recognized as important. No feeling that said this was the last normal minute. Her phone sat face down on the counter at some point. The screen went dark. A message came in from someone else, unnoticed. Later, another one. By early evening, the light outside began to change. The camera adjusted. Shadows stretched across the porch. Still, the door didn't open. She was supposed to be home by then. Not for anything serious. Just routine. Someone expected her to answer a text. Someone expected to hear about her day. When she didn't respond, it didn't feel alarming. She was busy. She was driving. She was with family. Hours passed like that. Quietly. The grocery bags remained where she had set them down. The milk warming. The bread softening. Small, ordinary things left unfinished. Nothing about that day had suggested danger. Not the text. Not the drive. Not the house. Trust had filled in every gap where questions might have been. And outside, the camera kept recording a front door that never opened again. She had been doing this kind of thing for years. Showing up, filling in gaps, being reliable in small, quiet ways that didn't get noticed until they were missing. If someone needed groceries, she brought them. If someone needed a ride, she made room. It was how she was built. Her uncle fit easily into that rhythm. He didn't ask for much, never raised his voice, never made her uncomfortable in any way she could name. He was just there, familiar, a part of the background of her life. Growing up, he had been around at birthdays and holidays. He brought cheap gifts and told the same stories twice. He wasn't warm, exactly, but he wasn't threatening either. Just a constant. Someone you didn't question. As an adult, she saw him less, but nothing had changed when she did. The same house, the same street, the same tone in his voice. He complained more now, about his knees, about money, about people who didn't help each other like they used to. She listened. She always listened. Her visits followed a pattern. She never stayed too long, never went late, never got too personal. She kept a respectful distance, the way people do when they care but don't want complications. It felt safe because it always had been. That's how trust works. It doesn't announce itself. It just accumulates. On that day, there was nothing to mark the visit as different. No argument beforehand. No tension she noticed. No reason to bring someone with her. No reason to tell anyone she was going inside. She had told a friend she'd call later. Told someone else she'd be home before dinner. All normal promises, made casually, with no sense they might matter. Inside the house, the conversation stayed light. He asked about her job. She gave the short version. He joked about how tired she must be all the time. She laughed politely. It was the same dance they always did. She moved through the space without thinking. Kitchen, hallway, living room. She knew where things were. She didn't need directions. That kind of familiarity lowers your guard in ways you don't notice until later. At some point, she mentioned needing to head out soon. Not sharply, just a comment. Something said in passing. Time didn't stop. It didn't slow down. It just kept moving forward, unnoticed. Outside, the street stayed calm. Neighbors came and went. Cars pulled into driveways. Someone closed a garage door. The world continued, unaware that something important had already shifted. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. Then another. The screen lit briefly and went dark. No one inside the house reacted to it. No one outside could see it. As evening settled in, the ordinary routines around her continued without her. Dinner plans adjusted. Laundry waited. A show queued up and never played. Small absences stacking quietly on top of each other. When she didn't show up where she said she would, the explanations came easily. She lost track of time. She stopped for gas. She fell asleep on the couch. These were the kinds of excuses that had always fit her life before. No one imagined danger. Why would they? She wasn't reckless. She wasn't secretive. She wasn't someone who disappeared. And her uncle's house had never been a place to worry about. As the hours passed, the trust that had carried her through the day began to stretch thin, though no one could say exactly when. A message went unanswered longer than usual. A call rang until it stopped. Still, no one rushed over. No one called the police. The night settled in gently, like it always did. Inside that house, something had shifted, but there was no sound that traveled beyond the walls. No signal that crossed the street. No moment captured on camera that explained what was happening. Just the absence of movement. The camera outside recorded the porch as the sky darkened. The light over the door flicked on automatically. Moths gathered. The door remained closed. By the time concern finally took shape in someone's chest, it was already late. Late enough that the word visit no longer fit. Late enough that the silence felt heavier than before. And still, nothing on the outside looked wrong. The first thing that felt off was how long it took her to answer. Not alarming, just noticeable. She was usually quick, even if it was just a short reply. A single word, an emoji, something to let people know she'd seen the message. That night, there was nothing. A friend sent another text, then another. The tone shifted slightly, from casual to checking in. Still calm, still normal. No one wanted to sound dramatic over nothing. Her phone rang once. Then, again. It stopped. It didn't go to voicemail right away. It just rang until it didn't. At home, the lights stayed off. The car wasn't there. Her place looked exactly like it had when she left. That was easy to explain too. She hadn't come back yet. She might be staying over somewhere. She might have decided to take a longer break. But that wasn't like her. By morning, the unease had settled into something heavier. Messages sent late the night before sat unread. A call placed early went unanswered. She hadn't shown up to work. She hadn't called ahead. People began reaching out to each other, quietly, comparing notes, trying to piece together when they'd last heard from her. The last clear moment anyone could point to was the grocery run. The text saying she was on her way. The simple, ordinary plan to stop by her uncle's house. Someone drove past her place again. Still no car. No movement. No sign she'd been there at all. They called her uncle. He answered. He sounded normal. Maybe a little tired. He said she had stopped by just like she said she would. Dropped off the groceries. Stayed for a bit. Then left. It was said so easily. So cleanly. The kind of answer that closes a question before it opens another. But something about it didn't settle right. She would have texted someone if she left. She would have said she was on her way. She would have shown up somewhere. Hours passed. Then more. The gap widened. When someone asked him again, later, the story stayed the same. She came by. They talked. She left. Nothing unusual. That consistency should have been comforting. Instead, it made the silence feel louder. People started checking places she might go. A friend's house. A store she liked. The roads between. Nothing. Her phone stayed silent. By the second night, the worry stopped pretending to be polite. Calls went unanswered. Messages stacked up. Her name sat at the top of inboxes, untouched. Someone suggested maybe she'd lost her phone. Maybe she needed space. Maybe something had come up. But none of those ideas explained the missing car, or the missed work, or the way every attempt to reach her went nowhere. When someone went back to her uncle's street, they noticed how ordinary everything looked. His house blended in with the rest. Same porch, same light, same quiet. The camera mounted outside still pointed at the door. Footage from that day showed her arriving. It showed her walking up the steps with the grocery bags. It showed the door opening. It did not show her leaving. At first, that didn't mean much. Cameras miss things. Angles matter. Timing matters. She could have left another way. She could have stepped out when it wasn't recording. But the more they looked, the harder it was to ignore. No movement. No second appearance. No sign of her returning to the porch. When this detail surfaced, it wasn't announced. It spread slowly, one person telling another. A quiet, uneasy realization forming piece by piece. Her uncle was asked about the camera. He said he didn't know much about it. Said it came with the house. Said it didn't always work right. Still calm. Still steady. But now, the trust that had once felt solid began to thin. Not break. Just stretch. Like something pulled too far, too gently, for too long. The house hadn't changed. The street hadn't changed. But the story had. And somewhere between the missing footage and the missing person, the ordinary explanation stopped fitting. The silence wasn't just absence anymore. It was a presence. The moment everything shifted wasn't loud. There was no argument anyone heard about. No call that cut off mid-sentence. No sound that carried past the walls of the house. It was a decision made quietly. Someone decided she had waited long enough. That guessing was no longer helpful. That silence at this point meant something. A knock landed on the front door of a house on that quiet street. Firm, but not aggressive. The kind of knock that still believed in explanations. Her uncle answered. He didn't seem surprised. He didn't ask why they were there. He stood in the doorway like this was just another interruption in a normal day. They asked about her again. This time, the answer took a little longer. He repeated the same story. She stopped by, dropped off groceries, stayed a bit, left. He couldn't remember exactly when. Time gets away from you, he said. Especially when you're older. The words sounded practiced now, smoothed over by repetition. Someone asked if they could come inside. There was a pause, just long enough to notice. Then he stepped aside. Inside, the house looked the same as it always had. Dim, cluttered. Nothing obviously wrong. No overturned furniture. No broken glass. No sign of a struggle. The grocery bags were gone. When asked about them, he said he'd put everything away. Didn't think much of it. She'd left, after all. That detail landed heavier than the rest. Because if she had left, those bags would have gone with her. She never bought things she didn't need. She never left errands unfinished. The house felt smaller the longer they stood there. The air stale. The silence thick in a way that had nothing to do with quiet. Someone noticed her car wasn't parked outside. That made sense. It should have been with her. But no one could explain where it was. They asked if she had gone out the back. He said no. Then corrected himself. Said maybe. He wasn't sure. He didn't really pay attention to things like that. His eyes didn't wander. His hands didn't shake. But something about the way he answered felt off. Not wrong enough to accuse. Just wrong enough to remember. By the time they left, the visit hadn't solved anything. It had only narrowed the story in an uncomfortable way. She had come here, and everything after that existed inside those walls. Later, someone reviewed the camera footage again, slower this time, frame by frame, watching not just for her, but for anything. They noticed how quickly the door had opened when she arrived, how little time passed between her stepping onto the porch and disappearing inside. They noticed the door never opening again, no shadows crossing the threshold, no light spilling out late at night, no sign of anyone leaving with her. There was a back door, but it faced a narrow space between houses. Hard to miss someone carrying bags. Hard to miss a car pulling away. Her phone last connected to a nearby signal around the time she arrived. After that, nothing. No movement. No pings. Just a sudden stop. The point of no return doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's just a door closing. Sometimes it's a moment that feels exactly like every other moment before it. At some point inside that house, something changed. A line was crossed quietly, without witnesses, without urgency. Whatever happened, it happened where trust had been strongest, where she felt safe enough to put her phone down, safe enough not to rush, safe enough not to leave right away. That was the decision that couldn't be undone. By the end of the day, the tone around her absence had hardened. The soft explanations had run out. The hope that she would just reappear began to thin. The house on that street was no longer just familiar. It was heavy with questions that refused to settle. And the silence that followed her visit stopped feeling accidental. It felt intentional. The silence didn't break all at once. It spread. Hours turned into days, and her absence began to settle into the routines she used to fill. Her name stopped lighting up her phone. Her car never appeared in familiar places. The explanations people had leaned on quietly fell away, one by one. There was no final message, no goodbye, no sign that she had chosen to leave anything behind. The house on that quiet street stayed standing. Lights came on at night. Trash went out on schedule. From the outside, it looked like nothing had changed. But everything had. Her family waited for something definitive. A call. A sighting. Anything that would turn the silence into information. Instead, they were left with fragments. A grocery list. A text saying she was on her way. A camera that showed her entering a house she trusted. That footage became the last clear record of her life moving forward. People replayed it more times than they could count. Not because it revealed something new, but because it was the only place where she was still moving, still alive, still unaware that this was the end of her normal world. The camera never captured what happened inside. It never showed her face again. It just kept recording the doorway long after she was gone. Her uncle stopped answering questions, then stopped answering the phone. His version of the day never changed, but it didn't grow either. It stayed frozen, like a sentence that ended too early. The grocery bags were never seen again. Her car was found weeks later, abandoned in a place she never went. Clean, empty, no clear signs of when it had been left there, or by whom. Just another object separated from her, waiting to be explained. As time passed, the focus shifted away from finding her and toward understanding the space she left behind. the habits that had defined her days, the way she always checked in, the way she never vanished without a word. Every memory of her became sharper, more fragile. People spoke about her carefully, like saying her name too loudly might disturb something that was already too quiet. There was no moment where it felt finished, no clean ending that allowed anyone to move on, just a slow acceptance that the door she walked through was the last one anyone saw her cross. Trust became harder after that. Ordinary favors felt heavier. Quick visits felt longer. The idea of safety inside familiar walls no longer felt automatic. The house on that street eventually changed hands. New people moved in, fresh paint, different cars in the driveway. The camera was taken down, but the space where she disappeared didn't change. It stayed fixed in memory, a place defined not by what was seen, but by what wasn't. Her story didn't end with answers. It ended with absence. A woman who did everything right, who followed her routine, who trusted the people she was supposed to trust. She went to drop off groceries. She never walked back out. And for everyone who loved her, the silence that followed never really lifted. It just learned how to live alongside them, quiet and permanent, like an open door that never closed.